Hi, I'm Anna Martin, and this is the Flex podcast. And today we're talking about weight loss. Sorry, I'm just putting hand cream amongst my hands, driving me potty. Um, so we're going to talk about weight loss so that you are able to cut out the noise of the other things that you're hearing. And there can be so much information out there on social media, on like articles on the websites of newspapers, stuff like that, where we're just constantly reading all these things, which confuses us even more. So for me, the most important thing always is to just cut out the noise. You already know what you need to do to make this happen. And inevitably, I reckon 80% of my PT clients, when they come to me, they want to lose some weight. It's one of the things they say: I want to lose weight and I want to tone up. So it is important that we cover that so that we're able to see exactly how we need to do it, and also so that we can do it in a way that works for us. So, first and foremost, I always start basically with the maths of it. In order for us to lose some weight, we need to eat slightly less food than we need so that our body is able to get to that point where we are removing some of our body fat storage. Now, how we do that in order to retain as much muscle mass as possible, because most people want to lose weight and tone up at the same time. So we want to maintain our muscle mass, is that we are going to eat a high protein diet or higher protein diet than potentially we have been. And also that we may be able to look at adding in some kind of resistance training in order to get onto that toned up feeling and make sure we've got some muscle hanging around in there. Now, we always do want to look at the quality of food that we're eating so that we're trying to eat as like fruit and veg and decent sources of protein and things like that. But fundamentally, we're going to begin by trying to put ourselves into what is called a calorie deficit, which is when we're eating a little bit less than we need. Now, how you do that is totally up to you. So for some people, it can be as simple as trying to cut out or cut down on the amount of alcohol they drink, or they might decide, you know what, I'm eating literally a bag of crisps every day. I could easily swap that over and then add more vegetables with my evening meal and take away one of the larger portions of whatever you're having. Like, I don't know, maybe having pasta and garlic bread. No, I'm just going to not have garlic bread. We can just do things like not have table sauces. So there's logistical ways that you can look at it like that without looking at calories. But for a lot of people, it does tend to give them a bit more of a realistic picture if they are willing to look at their calorie intake a little bit. So if that is something you're interested in, what I tend to do with my clients is I ask them to honestly track their food for 2 to 3 days so they can realistically see how much energy they're consuming. So I did this with a client recently. She tracked for 2 or 3 days and she was averaging 2,500 calories a day. Now, this particular person has always had quite high maintenance calories anyway, because she does do a lot of lifting. So we just reduced her calories to 2,200 to start with, and then we built on it from there. So if we needed to drop it again a little bit, we will. But at the moment, it's coming off and we're seeing her strength come back and all that kind of thing. So we are looking to make small changes to begin with to facilitate the building of positive habits moving forward. Now, obviously, that's quite not an extreme situation because she lifts weights and so do lots of my other clients. But if you're not resistance training and you haven't, maybe you're not doing tons of exercise or whatever, you're shorter, you're a smaller person, you may need to go in a little bit lower. In fact, you will need to go in a bit lower. But when you track your calories realistically for what you're eating before you're even thinking about cutting your calories down, it gives you that realistic picture. So then what would have happened if this client who was eating 2,500 calories a day, we made a 10% deficit, so we went for 2,250. If she'd cut her calories immediately down to 1,800, we can almost guarantee, but by the end of week 2, she would have been pretty tired, finding it maybe hard to fit in the social life she was used to on higher calories, and maybe she wouldn't be able to fit in the food choices she wanted. It may have been quite stressful for her to manage to do that around everything else that she's balancing. And the joy of seeing those results might have been slightly outweighed by the fact that she wasn't able to stick to it, and therefore ended up at the end of week 1 or the end of week 2 being like, God, I'm so hungry, I'm so miserable, I can't do this. So we have to make what's a realistic picture for that person. And that can be really key in finding the balance in terms of what we need for our energy, and also how we like to eat. So when you're looking at all of the other types of kind of dietary recommendations people are giving to you, or styles of eating like intermittent fasting and the ketogenic diet, low carb diets, low fat diets, whatever it is that you're seeing, even slimming groups, what they're looking at is creating an easy structure for you to be in a calorie deficit when it comes to weight loss. So I'm not talking about any other types of health benefits that you may or may not have heard of at this time. But when you're looking at those diets or those ways of eating, we are eliminating a food group or a time. So fasting is cutting out a time of day that you're eating. So you're reducing the amount of hours that you eat in. And all of those things are functioning to cause a restriction of some kind that then puts you in a calorie deficit, which is why people use them for weight loss. Rules tend to be really helpful for people because once you tell someone the rules, it makes it easier to follow for some people. So, what works for you? If it works for you to maybe restrict the times that you're eating, or to, change some of the foods that you're eating, that might work really well for you, but it might not work really well for someone else. So, for me, fasting isn't for me. Like, I have tried it, I end up basically just shoving any food that I can find in my face as soon as the fasting window is over. It's like I have absolutely no control over myself at all. My body is so hungry that all it wants to do is shove food in it. So for me, the benefits of potentially doing such long breaks would not be worthwhile for me. Also, I need my energy for my work and for teaching and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that wouldn't work. So for me, I personally would prefer to be in a slight calorie deficit and do that for longer, and also focus on the quality of food that I'm eating and having a nice structure, having snacks when I need to around my training. But if I'm able not to have snacks and just stick to my main meals because I'm really well feeling myself well in those times, that's what makes me feel balanced and gives me more wiggle room when it comes to going out and seeing people and social plans. Again, how I see it might not be how someone else sees it, and they might want to do like overly restrict something in a different way. And that, I am not here to say whether that's a good or bad thing, but I think for the my most part for my clients, they come in thinking maybe they need to be really over restrictive in some way, like we mentioned before, like really low carb or really low fat. But actually, when they're able to create a dietary balance for themselves, they feel better and they feel more in control because they're able to adapt it to any social situation that comes up or any change in their schedule. So I would mildly recommend erring on the side of moderation and just going in the middle, doing the things that you know to be true. So we want to eat plenty of veg, we want to eat some fruit, we want to get some high quality protein in. And all that means is that we're looking for nutritional sources of protein. So, I mean, I don't really need to tell you, you're probably from Britain in some shape, way, or form. And we love things like sausages and hamburgers and stuff like that. So there's nothing wrong with those. They're all great. Taste great. Probably not the best, most optimal for our health. But if we're looking at how can I get high protein foods in, those things probably wouldn't be my absolute go-to. And it would be more like your oily fish, white fish, chicken, any types of meat replacement foods that make your life better if you're like vegan or vegetarian. So eating a wide variety of, half decent protein sources. And that's not to say never eat a sausage, because we all have a sausage, but it shouldn't be that we're relying on kind of those more overly processed forms of meat, and instead seeing what we can do with the kind of stuff that's maybe a little bit easier to fit into our diet and maybe has slightly more nutritional value over the course of time. Obviously, there's the resistance training part because you want to maintain your muscle mass as you're dieting, because presumably you would quite like to be strong and to feel a bit more toned and stuff at the same time. Now, resistance training is going to help with that. So is the high protein stuff. So if you can combine the two, you're going to get your optimal outcome over time. And I don't very often, I try not to tell people what to do. But if there's one thing that I can urge you to do, especially as a woman, talking to probably a woman, please do some resistance training of any kind. You don't have to be a bodybuilder at all. That's not what I'm asking for. You don't even need a gym membership, but please do some resistance training because as you age, it's going to be even more important to you. And we want to maintain that muscle mass and make sure that we are feeling as strong as possible because as we're losing weight and we're in this slight deficit that we're in, we are losing weight. And if we are lucky, we're able to lose more body fat than anything else, but we have to manipulate things for that to happen. And that's protein intake and your resistance training. Without that and just being in a calorie deficit, we are probably going to lose some of our muscle mass as well. So that's overall weight, right? So it's just weight loss. But essentially, if we can do fat loss and we can try to reduce our body fat and maintain our muscle mass, or if we're very lucky, gain some muscle mass at the same time, we're going to be in a much better position at the end of it. And that's not to say sometimes for some people, they just need to get some weight off because it is essential. It's been recommended to them medically and they need to get it off. Yes, we would love to maintain muscle mass and get strong at the same time. But sometimes that might be a secondary goal. And sometimes the health benefits of just reducing weight might be a priority for that person. I'd say for the vast majority of clients that I have in, gaining or maintenance of muscle mass is quite key. Primarily because, as I said before, people do come to me, they want to lose weight and tone up, but they also want to feel stronger. And that can be quite a key factor. So we try to do what we can to balance the entire situation. So, so first and foremost, you're going to slip yourself into a little calorie deficit. Nothing too major to start with, probably. Just see how you feel. Then you're going to look at your protein intake and maybe adding some resistance training in if I can persuade you to. And if you need help with that, just let me know because I've got my Flex program. It's online. You've got home workouts and gym workouts that you can do. So you don't need any equipment to start with the home workouts, by the way. So do let me know if you need any help with it. Then you're going to look at your veg intake, fruit intake, and then that might be enough for you to start with. And that's the key. We just want to get started if this is a goal and then learn how to be consistent with it. So being consistent, even though we might not see these immediately large goal changes in our body weight that we want to see, but being consistent because it's the consistency over time that's going to help to change your habits, which you will need to do in order for this to be a sustainable thing. So we want to try to build in what we can in terms of great habits and things that we're getting used to in life. Even just changing the way that we eat and the way that we look at food can take quite a long time. It's taken quite a long time to develop the relationship you've got with it now. So we've got to be flexible in terms of this might take a little bit longer in order to build it into a lifestyle that I can maintain long term. When you're feeling like you're kind of getting into those basics and things are happening for you, we can start to look at being more active generally. So it might be walking a bit more, it might be doing some cardio classes, you might love a cycle or a spin or whatever it is. We can look at your sleep pattern to make sure you're getting plenty of sleep. Your sleep massively affects your hunger hormones and the next day. So if you're consistently not getting good quality sleep, that can really fuck with your feng shui in terms of how you're going to balance your hunger and your cravings for things like lots of carbs and so on the next day. And again, carbs are not the devil, but if we want to have this balanced approach to eating, so we want to eat a bit of everything. And rather than, when you're really tired, when you're really tired and really hungover, and all you can think about eating is hula hoops. Like, that's all I can think about eating. Hula hoops, Diet Coke, maybe I want some chips with cheese on. Like, my nutritional choices, nothing bad about any of those foods, but I could make better ones if I wasn't tired or hungover. So if we can get a good sleep pattern, brilliant. And then maybe we're going to start to look at our own lifestyle patterns and potentially some of our social life patterns as well. And it doesn't mean that we can't do any of the things we love, because that is not how it should be. But it does mean that for some people, their own, how they run their life and the things that they see as normal might not be something that potentially later on down the line that they would see that's a normal lifestyle. So, for example, sometimes I work with people who maybe they Uber eat like 15 meals out of 20. And that's just how it works for them. That's what they're used to. Obviously, it's expensive to start with. But secondly, it's probably going to be a lot harder for you to hit that higher protein intake, unless you're obviously constantly eating Nando's. And obviously to get that variety of micronutrients or your fruit and veg in there, because let's be honest, most takeaway food of any kind, even ones that are easier to work into a healthy lifestyle like in Nando's, they still don't come with 3 portions of vegetables of that meal, and it makes it expensive to do that. So there's ways that maybe we need to look at our lifestyle, and if all of our social life, like maybe we like to see our friends 4 times a week, and seeing those friends every single time involves the pub and 6 pints, potentially that is like a social life thing that maybe we want to start to look at. Like, is there other things that we can do with our friends? Do our friends actually feel the same deep down as us? And would they like to be persuaded to go for a walk and then go to the pub for 1 pint instead of just go straight to the pub for 6? Are there ways that we can kind of look at what we're doing? And there are things potentially with your evening habits. If you're coming home from work and you have quite a long evening at home, so maybe you're home by 6:30, so now you've got 4 hours before you're going to bed. Those evening habits, like what time are you eating your food? Because if you're eating it very early, you're then going to need snacks later. What kind of snacks are you going to have later on? Your food choices for your meals, as well as for those that kind of evening munches that maybe you're getting. And possibly, are there some issues there in terms of feeling like you're emotionally eating, or eating patterns that maybe would be something that you feel like you might benefit from talking to someone about and going through the reasons why those might come up for you? So there's very many things that we can look at later on that maybe we need to dig into a little deeper. But primarily, first and foremost, probably the easiest thing for most people to do is get into a slight calorie deficit, look at their protein, think about adding in a resistance training session if they haven't already, and getting some veg and fruit in. So once we look at those 4 things, that is plenty to focus on to begin with. Later on down the line, we're looking at activity, lifestyle patterns, evening eating habits, sleep, food choices, all of that kind of stuff. But if you're coming in from scratch, it can feel quite overwhelming to suddenly start talking about whether or not you should be eating chickpeas or not. So we just first and foremost focus on the things that are going to make the biggest difference and help to therefore get us some results and help us to stay motivated. So at some point, your motivation is going to dribble off because it is a very transient feeling. And when it does, we need to be in a position where we can start to use our own discipline to carry on and make that happen. And getting to that point can be quite tricky for some people. So just bear that in mind. Probably by week 3, you're going to feel less motivated than you did on week 1. And you have to have that in your head that it is coming, and I need to have some strategies in and some systems in so I know that I can carry on. And that can be as simple as knowing what you're going to eat for your main meals that week, and knowing that you're going to hit your protein and that you're going to get at least 5 portions of vegetables in that day. They're going to be the discipline that you're going to have 100%, and that's how we're going to carry on. And that's why I work with my clients in these brackets, so that we have like a base level that seems easier and something that they can realistically hit, and then a goal amount that they hit on the best day of their life. So I'm gonna say, let's do it in terms of veg and fruit. So on a base day, absolute non-negotiable that they're gonna hit is 5 portions of fruit and veg. On a great day, they're gonna hit 7 or 8. And that's their bracket. So if they only hit 5, they don't feel like they failed, because 5 is a decent amount and it's got some good coverage for them in terms of their fiber intake and their micronutrient intake. Brilliant. But if they have this peak day and they manage to hit 7 or 8, they're going to feel extra chuffed with themselves. But by not hitting that peak day, they don't feel like they've failed. So that can be a really good strategy. when you're trying to get into that discipline is to have that open bracket so that you are not feeling like you failed just because you're not on top of your A game every single day. It might also be that we're asking friends and family for support, especially if they're people that we live with, so that we're able to maybe slightly change the food that we're cooking or the way that we're cooking it. So for some people that won't be a big deal, and they're actually eating quite healthy food and quite a good variety of food going on, but they're just struggling with the quantity of what they're eating. So they're eating great quality food, but actually they're eating just too much of it. And then that can be kind of an easy thing to do because their actual urges for the food they're eating are fabulous, but they just need to slightly decrease the portion size. So that can be for one person, but another person might have quite a lot of food in their diet that they maybe want to look at changing over time. So, for example, if they're not eating any fruit or veg at all, and they tons of it's just meat and white carbohydrates, there's obviously going to be some micronutrients missing there, and there could potentially be some fiber-based issues that are, really affecting their digestion and not making it feel the most comfortable. So there would be potentially more things to fiddle with in that scenario in terms of quality of the food that they're getting in and so on. And for that, it can be nice to talk to like friends and family, people that you're sharing food with, or maybe that you just need support from. Maybe there's another friend who wants to do the same thing as you. Obviously, you can reach out to a PT or a Fit Pro. Like we're obviously more than willing to help you with that kind of stuff. But for some people, just need to have the support of people around them as well. Um, Being consistent, it can be tough, especially when you're not seeing the needle move, and it can be even more important for some people than others. So when you're working out and you're trying to lose some body fat at the same time, we need a certain amount of fuel so that we can still carry on training. So there's like a little sweet spot where we need to be in a slight deficit, but we also need to feel we have enough energy for our training sessions and so on. And sometimes, especially for women, the needle moving in terms of our weight loss or fat loss goals can be quite slow. Um, One, it can be to do with our actual tracking, what we're actually eating versus what we think we are. So, for example of that, I definitely work with a lot of clients who eat incredibly Monday to Thursday, and then it all sort of slips a little bit over the weekend. So there tends to be a much higher alcohol intake. And I'm not hating on alcohol because I do drink alcohol. So I'm not being like, you should never have another drink ever. But it obviously has a decent caloric value and it doesn't have much nutritional benefit. So if we're then smashing a bottle of wine Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's going to have some kind of implication on our overall calorie balance for that week. Potentially, we might not be in the deficit that we think we are. And as well, in terms of food choices, it does make it a little bit trickier if you're hungover to make those good food choices. So, we obviously would need to look at that and balance it a little bit more. But so for some people, it can be that they're not quite in the deficit that they think they are. And also for women, it can be quite slow in general. Also, you might be gaining a bit of muscle in there, which still obviously muscle weighs. And whilst your body composition is changing, so your body composition is your muscle mass and body fat that you have on you, and your bone and stuff, obviously, but we're mainly concerned with body fat and muscle. Um, we might be having a bit of changes in that body composition in terms of we're having more muscle and we are losing body fat. And we can notice that our body is changing shape, but we're not actually seeing the needle move. And that can be quite tricky for some people to work around because we can see changes are happening, but the scale weight isn't changing as quickly as we wanted it to. And for some people, huge big deal, really hard to navigate, partly because and especially women, like I'm 42 when I'm recording this, and the vast majority of articles when I was younger in the 90s and noughties was talking about famous people's weight and what they ate to lose weight and to keep their weight down and how they only weighed this much. And they went on a diet because they needed to lose an extra 5 kilos, despite the fact they were in a healthy weight bracket. Like all that kind of very, very heavily focused on somebody's weight. So we have all these things in our head sometimes that tell us that we must weigh a certain amount. Maybe we've been to a lot of slimming groups, there's lots of weigh-ins. We must weigh this much, you must lose weight. But actually, for most of us, we wouldn't care how much we weighed if we had a strong physique that we were happy with and that we felt like we were able to do all the things that we wanted to do. So sometimes it can be a little bit about trying to undo some of the things that we have this sort of unconscious thoughts about in our head that tell us what's right and what's wrong. But actually, if you are feeling stronger and you're seeing the shape of your body change over time, you know that the results are happening despite the fact that your scale weight might be only changing a little bit over that time. That consistency over a year, a couple of years, means that you have new routines in you that are going to help with all of these things moving forward. So we want to have muscle mass as we move through perimenopause and the menopause. We need that in one to combat the loss of muscle mass that aging happens with aging, but also so that we have this really metabolically active tissue in us as we're going through these changes and when our hormones are telling us to store fat in different places and so on. We want to have that muscle mass there so that that can help us through that process as much as possible. So I know that it can be sometimes feel a bit, oh, sorry, I threw my pen around. I know sometimes it can feel a bit like, oh God, this is taking so long. But the way that you're doing it and the way that you're approaching it is going to be making such a difference to you long term. And I think that's key for a lot of people because most of us want to feel good for life, despite the fact that we might want to lose £6 for holiday. It's just that over life, it would just be nice to feel like that all the time rather than have all these concerns. I just wanted to talk a little bit about going out, like for food and stuff. We touched on it a bit with like takeaways and stuff, but it does make it harder because when you look, I know they put the calories in the menu now, but it gives you, it does ruin your life. Don't get me wrong, like I don't like seeing it on there either, but it does give you an idea of how much that's going to affect your calorie deficit if that's what you're looking for. So let's say that you're a small woman, so your calorie intake is relatively low on this weight loss journey that you're on. So maybe you're on quite low calories, like 1,500 calories. If you go out for the burger that I had on Saturday with my friend, that was 1,200 calories in the burgers and chips. That would be almost my whole calorie intake if I was smaller. And that has a huge impact for you in terms of what you've then got left, but also in terms of staying in that deficit over a sociable week. Now, if you're going out for dinner many times, it's going to have quite a big effect on you many times over that week. So, that, and again, not saying that we shouldn't be going out for dinner. We absolutely should if that's something we enjoy. But it's about the reality of that for people who are on maybe lower calories or who maybe didn't know that their food contained that much energy when they were eating it at the pub or the restaurant or wherever. And sometimes just having the awareness of it can make massive have a massive impact in terms of, right, we know how much is in there now. So maybe when I go out again on Saturday night, I'm not going to have the exact same burger that I had on Wednesday and maybe Friday when I went out. So just like making those small adjustments. And to be fair, it isn't what I actually wanted. I wanted the fish pie, but they didn't have it. And gluten-free menus tend to be somewhat limited. So yeah, that was the only other thing that didn't cost £795. So I went with it. And it was lovely. It was lovely. But sometimes as well, when you start eating, you're like, not sure it's 1,300 calories worth of lovely, if I'm honest. It was more being out with my friend and talking to my friends and that nice time that we were having together was more important actually than the food I was eating, which was very nice. Won't remember that burger as the best burger I've ever eaten. It was absolutely fine. But it's definitely not up there. But what was lovely was spending 4 hours talking crap to my friends, which sometimes we have to weigh that up a little bit as well. Like this habit we've got into about the types of foods that we eat when we go out. There's nothing wrong with that. If we enjoy it, it makes us happy, and we're still able to achieve the rest of the goals that we're setting ourselves. But sometimes our actual thing that we're enjoying is being with our friends, or being with the person that we're dating, or being with our family. And the food that we're eating is very secondary to that. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the food is like top tier priority. If you're going to a really nice restaurant and you haven't eaten out for ages, it's really special. It's a birthday. It's this, it's that. You are going somewhere that you've been absolutely gagging to go to for ages. The food is top tier priority. 100%. I am there all over it. I love eating. But sometimes, when you go somewhere and you're like, I know the food's not going to be majestic. It's going to be absolutely fine. But it's where my friend wanted to go, so we're going. On those occasions, not having the 1,300 calorie burger for me would be a perfectly fine compromise, because I know that burger's coming out of a frozen packet. So I wouldn't really be bothered. I'd rather just see what else I could get in that was high protein and had some veg with it than I would be bothered about what the burger or the chips, or you know what I mean. Okay. So yes, I'm gonna wrap things up a bit because I feel like I've been talking for ages again, and I have. It's 30 minutes. So I'm gonna try to be a little bit quicker wrapping up. So in summary, most people come to me thinking that they don't know what to do with their own health and diet, nutrition, and so on, in order to facilitate weight loss happening. But actually, they do. They do know it's healthy eating. If we start with healthy eating and we get all the basics in play, so high protein, fruit and veg, doing some resistance training, getting some sleep in, moving a bit more if we have a very sedentary job. If we get these basics in, stuff happens. If we get in this calorie deficit, stuff happens. It's just that for most people, they don't do it long enough or consistently enough. And sometimes for people, they're not aware how much food they're eating and what the implications of that have for them in terms of the goal that they've set themselves with this weight loss. So do, first and foremost, try to cover the basics. You know what you're doing. You know what it is to eat healthily and to eat like this range of micronutrients, this range of protein sources, and trying to get some quite nice fibrous foods in, whole grains where we can. We know we need to do that. We know we need to drink some water, stay decently hydrated, 2 to 3 liters a day, roughly, of fluids. We know we need to sleep more and try to get that sort of 6 to 8 hours, 7 hours for most people in the bag. If we can rinse and repeat those basics and also develop the self-awareness on our diet, so we know when we're in a calorie deficit, whether that's via tracking or via observation, or just, maybe you're eating a litre bottle of mayonnaise a week and you could do without it. There may be easy fixes, quick fixes that we can easily do. But if we're able to maintain and be self-aware of that, what the food we're eating and the types of calories, the types of food we're putting in our body, and the potentially the ways that we might be able to create that calorie deficit for ourselves, and be truthful with ourselves, then we know what we're doing. We can roll with it. It's just rinse and repeat those basics, and be honest with yourself. When you need help, ask for it. Whether that's someone like me, or whether that's a friend or a member of your family, or someone, ask for help, ask for some support. We don't have to do all this stuff on our own, but it can be a little bit trickier if your friends or your family are someone who's on quite an extreme diet, like some of the ones that we mentioned before. That can make life a little bit trickier for you, just in terms of maybe it's not what you want to do, and you're looking to manage your weight in a slightly different way, which is absolutely your choice. But we can still have that emotional support from someone without having to do exactly the same thing as them. So, in summary, rinse and repeat the basics. If you are struggling and can't work out what it is that you're doing wrong and you need some help, you know where I am. If you want to jump on Flex to get your resistance training and to get some nutritional support and some advice, we have that. I have that as well. It's a low cost option. And we do 30-day group coaching programs on that. So that can really help in terms of just getting your head around what it feels like to have those basics in lined up and ready for action. But I'm going to stop talking, so I've dribbled right on, and I will speak to you again soon. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.